Welcome. This is a video for learning Weep, Weep Mine Eyes on page 376 of the Oxford Book of English Madrigals. It's going to be a matter of going through the madrigal and me pointing out one or two things that I hope will help you in learning it and that we will need to be aware of when we all sing together. And then at the end, I will play all the way through the madrigal so that you can rehearse your part in the context of all the others. Be aware that this madrigal in 5 parts, it crosses over quite a lot. So I'm giving you the harmonic context for your singing, and a lot of the time your individual part should be discernible if you just listen to the piano part, but sometimes it will be hard to follow your own part in the piano because the different parts, altos and tenors for example, cross over, and a lot of the time of course the 2 soprano parts. Before I say anything about some individual sections, a word or two about the piece generally. One of the things we talked about when we were outdoors was the importance of declaiming the text in this sort of madrigal. So particularly the second half, our cruel fortune, I me. Very few people go around saying I me anymore, but it's part of the Renaissance poetic toolkit, if you like, and in madrigals they're setting the text with an immediacy that we need to communicate in our singing. So watch out that you are very much declaiming the text in those places. A lot of the music takes its shape from, technically, suspensions. In other words, where your part sustains your note and the other parts are moved on. So in the first 3 bars, the basses is their D. That D in the bass held over into bar number 3 when the other parts have moved on, and it creates the musical interest. So watch out for where your part seems to do that. They come thick and fast. A lot of the time in this piece as well, and it's useful to bear in mind while you're learning, we'll want to shape the ends of the phrases to just fade off a little bit. So for example, into bar 8, take no rest. Just let the music fade off a little bit at the end of the phrase. Don't drive into the buffers at the end. And the last general point, and I will emphasise this in some of the sections, watch out for the difference between naturals and sharps because they change very quickly, and sometimes a natural in another part will be a sharp in your own part, perhaps only a beat later, so be wary of that. Now, looking at the first section, which will take up to bar 22, first of all be aware it's a simple one, but second soprano is going into bar 8. Your part, which has been the second part down, suddenly becomes the top of the texture, and sopranos need to be aware of that all the way through. From bar 9, the music is actually repeating what we all sang in the first 8 bars, but a 4th higher. So it naturally will feel stronger there. And it becomes even stronger from bar 16. So just mark that up in your copy, because it's a sort of climax at that point. And it builds up to the bars 19, 20, 21, and we see that with the alto phrase in 19, going into crotchets, that rising phrase. That sort of sums up what's gone on in the first 16 bars in a way. So a point in the piece that we want to feel we're working towards. Now the music then automatically almost at 22, 23 feels as if it drops down a bit because the two soprano parts drop out for a moment. But in fact, it's the start of another build, and instrumental in that is the fact that the writing goes into crotchets. So tenors in bar 22 start us off, and the music immediately feels, and is, that it's moving. And we're going to build the movement from crotchets and then over the page to some quavers as well. Keep watching for the accidentals, whether they're F sharps or F naturals here. And then when we get to bar 32 particularly, there's an instance of C natural second sopranos in bar 32, and then C sharp in bar 33. Don't be caught out by that one. And the tenors have emphasised it by singing C natural in bar 32 as well. And then in bar 34, the first sopranos begin the bar on F sharp. Altos, make sure you've noticed that your F in bar 34 is an F natural. Now, it's only fair to Wilby to say, well, why is there all this faffing about from F sharp to F natural? Well, of course, he's writing and singing about I die. So that's one of his ways of making that come alive. Bar 37, a point for everybody in 37. It should be a dotted minim with a crotchet rest because we need a breath before we go on. So if you can mark that in bar 37. Moving on to the next section, which we can take from 38 up to 56. Here is our rhetoric. I, me, our cruel fortune. And almost take off that quaver at the beginning of bar 40 to make sure you're prompt on the three quavers, our cruel fortune. Our cruel fortune. Don't sing it smoothly, legato. Make sure we hear your anguish. But then in bar 43, make sure we notice it all becomes smooth again and the top three parts move in parallel, rhythmically and harmonically. It's a beautiful moment of calm before the music sets off again in bar 48, and it appears to speed up. Because the phrases become shorter and we're on shorter note values. So in effect, it does speed up. Don't rush. The temptation is, because we feel the music speed up, that we all then get faster, which leads to disaster. The last section of the piece from bar 57 is more sustained to begin with. So observe that from 57 you want your more sustained style of the opening. And then a couple of specific rhythmic things, please. Notating bar 63, this is for second sopranos and tenors. Will you make your word dead a minim and write in a crotchet rest after? So you can see the rhythmic notation in the alto part. Am dead in a. So we all finish together. And similarly in bar 65, altos and tenors. This time, will you cross off the tied crotchet? So plain at the end of bar 64 is a minim, and you have, like the second soprano notation, you have a crotchet rest at the beginning of bar 65. Bar 66, tenors and altos, please make plain a crotchet again with a quaver. make plain a minim again with a crotchet rest. Same rhythmic notation in bar 66 as the second sopranos. First sopranos here from bar 64 are of course singing on your own, and that's intentional. And don't be afraid of that, but can you change bar 67, the last note of 67, to be a B flat? We can argue about whether it should be or not another day, but it's very hard to do it any other way, because the second sopranos are singing a B flat on the way down, and it's so short. Different editions vary, and I'm going with B flat. Last point to make about the piece, this is for everybody, is that from bar 70 onwards, I beg your pardon, altos, you have one in 69, the word joy, joy. So really using the tongue there, pushing the tongue forward neatly, quickly, but very clearly, with joy. And what we're not all very good at in singing, quite often, keeping it going right until the end of the piece. Every time we get that word joy, make sure that it is emphasised all the way through the rest of the madrigal. Because if you think about it, we started with weeping and we've had anguish about cruel fortune, but in the Elysian fields, they will meet with joy. So we'll get that change of emotion. So, here is a chord and first sopranos. I'm now going to play all the way through the madrigal for you to sing your part. Here we go. 1, 2.